Let's check in on the New England Patriots, year 2 of the Mac Jones era. Bill Belichick a couple of days ago said that he has improved leaps and bounds this offseason. Got Devontae Parker in the mix now. And we had a man on the ground there in New England the last couple of days. It's one of the super friends from the Pick Six podcast, Tyler Sullivan, who joins us now on HQ. Tyler, one of the big stories of this offseason for the Patriots is who's going to call plays offensively. Josh McDaniels, now the head coach of the Vegas Raiders. Is Matt Patricia, who was the former defensive coordinator there, is he really going to call offensive plays for the Patriots?
Yeah, as you said, Chris, it was the story going into training camp. How is this going to look? There was conversations of it being Matt Patricia, Joe Judge specifically working with the quarterbacks in title. Matt Patricia has senior advisor as a title. None of them have the offensive coordinator title. So we really didn't know what it was going to look like once camp opened. And once it did on Wednesday, it was pretty clear that it was Matt Patricia seemingly calling the plays. He was walking around camp holding a walkie-talkie, seemingly talking into Mac Jones and the rest of the quarterbacks' helmets. So it looks like you're looking at a somewhat of a masthead of Bill Belichick overlooking the offense, kind of having a more heavier hand in how that operation is going to go. Spent most of his time over on that side of the ball as opposed to the defensive side of the ball where he kind of come up and made his bones as a head coach. And then it's Matt Patricia calling the plays, kind of overseeing all of the operation. He does work with the offensive line, but mostly when it was getting to the legit competitive 11-on-11s, it was Matt Patricia holding that walkie-talkie, speaking, calling out plays. And then Joe Judge is right below them in terms of just specifically working with the quarterbacks and the skill position players. That continued a little bit into Thursday. A little bit more Bill Belichick kind of being involved in the offense, but still you could clearly see that Matt Patricia was the one kind of pulling the strings in the offense and calling those plays.
Interesting. We saw Devontae Parker make a touchdown grab in one of the pieces of video that we have from Patriots camp. They traded for him this offseason. How is he looking so far with Mac Jones?
Yeah, he's been the standout if we're talking about the wide receivers right now. Devontae Parker is coming as advertised. You know, obviously, you were kind of hoping that N'Keal Harry, who has since been traded to the Chicago Bears to be that big-bodied receiver when they drafted him in the first round of the 2019 NFL Draft. And it's funny because Devontae Parker's wearing that number 1. As you see right here, that was what N'Keal Harry wore last year. You almost kind of see what could have been. It's one of those, well, if N'Keal Harry could have been what Devontae Parker's been doing these past few days, maybe they would have had a more successful season over the last few years here in terms of passing the football. But so far, so good. Again, you're talking about a couple of sessions here where it's not fully padded. The contact and the level of competitiveness isn't fully there. But from what we've seen so far, the chemistry between Devontae Parker and Mac Jones has been superb. A couple of touchdown grabs on Wednesday, and that continued going into day 2. One of the more notable highlights that we saw was during some competitive red zone drills. There was kind of a twist and a turn. He was pushing off of Jalen Mills, and he kind of had to make an awkward back shoulder kind of catch, low to his knees, and he did it right in front of the crowd in Foxborough. That really popped, probably one of the bigger pops from the crowd on Thursday afternoon. So again, if you're looking at, fantasy football sleepers and stuff like that, Devontae Parker could be a legitimate red zone threat. He was clearly the biggest receiver that they had at that position. Not only will he be able to stretch the field, but I think he'll be a factor in that area as well.
Speaking of fantasy football, it's always frustrating for commissioners to figure out what's going on in the backfield. Starting, you said that we have James White on the PUP list, and still Damian Harris is going to be there. Is more than likely the bell cow running back. But what have you seen so far from Ramondre Stevenson, who's stepped up?
Yeah, I think one of the more interesting things that we're going to watch over the next few weeks and going into the preseason and regular season, especially with James White on PUP, is who's going to have that third down back role? Who's going to be the receiver out of the backfield for the New England Patriots? Last year when James White was out for the season with that hip injury, it was Brandon Bolden who saw most of the targets. He was the most targeted running back in that backfield last year. He's now in Vegas with Josh McDaniels. So there's a pretty significant hole there. And so again, James White's on PUP. We don't know what he's going to look like when he comes back from that hip injury. Not necessarily an easy injury to come back from. And a lot of us thought that maybe it could be rookie Pierre Strong who was coming to the Patriots, but he's been limited the past few days, which opens up an opportunity for Ramondre Stevenson. He spoke today and was talking about how he used this offseason to really emphasize becoming a better receiving back. And even during his rookie season, he showed some soft hands and some nice touch catching the football. But he said today he's been focusing more on blitz pickup, working in that third down back role, again, learning how to catch out of the backfield and go. And so for me, that's something where I think he can strive. We obviously saw that he can be a legit first down, second down back if something happens to Damian Harris. And if so, you're looking at a potential 3-down back because he showed the promise last season and he spent all offseason not only getting lean and working with a nutritionist, but also is working in that pass catching role.
We're talking Stevenson, Parker, Mac Jones, offensive play calling, but it was the defense that dominated today. What did you see from that side of the ball?
Yeah, and the defense kind of got a raw deal. So the most competitive portion of practice on Thursday was at the final 11 on 11s. It was noisy. The Patriots were pumping in music. Welcome to the Jungle. Thunderstruck was blaring all through to kind of simulate chaotic environments where communication isn't particularly strong, when you're on the road or you're facing a critical third down or something along those lines. They were trying to simulate kind of having that silent communication, and the defense really fed off that. The Patriots were 0 for 10 to start those red zone drills, and a lot of that was Mac Jones at the helm. But the final play, the 11th play on those drills, that Mac Jones ended up connecting with Hunter Henry, and what would have it is the defense had to do push-ups at the end of it. They got a raw deal there, obviously shut down for the first 10 plays, but that last one, they let up a touchdown to Hunter Henry, and they were the ones doing push-ups.
Defensive tackle Devon Godshaw signed a 2-year extension yesterday. Bill Belichick singing his praises this morning. Take a listen.
Well, it's one of the best defensive linemen in the league. I'm glad we were able to work that out with Devon and Drew and get it done. So obviously both sides are happy. Contract signed, and go forward.
Just called him one of the best defensive linemen in the league. This just a couple days after all that praise he heaped on Mac Jones. I didn't think the hoodie blue smoked like that in the preseason, Tyler.
I know, maybe he's getting soft in his old age, or he just really likes his roster. I don't know which one is which. But ultimately, this is an encouraging sign, obviously, when you have a coach like Bill Belichick calling somebody on his roster, one of the better players at his position in the NFL, in Godshaw. And so when you saw last year, he was, particularly strong against the run, just outside of the top 20 when you look at, Pro Football Focus and their grades in terms of against the run. He was a very promising player. The stats might not necessarily show it, but he was somebody who could, again, stop the run and help pass rushers. He could kind of take on double duty and allow guys like Matt Judon to get, come off the edge and get after quarterbacks. So when you have a guy like Godshaw who's only 27 years old at the defensive tackle spot, and then you look at what's going on with Christian Barmore, a very encouraging rookie coming into his second year in the league. I think everybody looks at Mac Jones as this promising Alabama product going into year 2. Christian Barmore arguably had a more impressive season in 2021 coming out of Alabama, a second-round pick for the Patriots. You're talking about solidifying the interior defensive line for the next few years here, which again, Belichick, I know we're talking about him on the offensive side of the ball, but he's a defensive guy at heart, and I think he's happy to secure that for the foreseeable future.
Tyler Sullivan covering the Patriots at training camp for us, and Bill Belichick being very, very pleased offensively and defensively with what he's seen so far, something we haven't seen from him that often. Here's the schedule. They start in the division in Miami week 1, then to Pittsburgh before the home opener against the Ravens. Then it's back on the road to the Packers. So just one of the first 4 games at Gillette this season.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.